Welcome, my name is John Glanville and this is video 14 in the Calmness in Mind series. In the last video we explored the metaphor of our feeling of I being the rider of the horse and our body with its conditioned mind, anxieties, OCD, unconscious self-regulation as being the horse. And that as the rider we can remain calm even if the horse is scared, being emotional or overwhelmed. And I trust that you're getting on well practicing this. And I hope you can keep reminding yourself of this each day, through your own inner dialogue as part of continuously reprogramming yourself. The horse is a bit anxious. The horse thinks a bad thing is going to happen. Interesting. The horse is afraid of conflict when in reality, I'm just asking that person not to be horrible to me. Poor horsey, he has a tummy ache. Not really my problem, though I'll stay out of his way, I'll put my attention elsewhere. Or I can place my attention on the tummy ache, as the rider, except that that's what's happening and I can have no story about it, even though the horsey might be whinging or even needing some sort of reassurance. Or perhaps I can just soothe and placebo him. It'll be gone soon, don't you worry, there. Can you see? There are so many ways that you can do this. And I say try them all. Find out what works for you. Experiment on yourself. And this is not something you just intellectually say, oh yeah, I understand what you're saying, John. I get the metaphor. No, we have to repeatedly live it until it becomes second nature within us. As I keep saying, repetition, repetition, and more repetition. And even when we're consciously bored of the repetition, that's when we know we need to do it even more. We are aiming to become a new person where anxiety struggles to hook us rather than trying to remain the same person but without anxiety. Now, another metaphor that you might consider is to classify your anxiety, OCD or depression as a parasite, something unwanted feeding from you. How do you get rid of parasites? Well, you starve them. You starve them from their source of energy, from what they feed off. So what does anxiety feed from? Well, it generates worrisome thoughts to invoke emotional reactions, which we might call energy, for it to feed from. We starve anxiety by in each moment thinking less, staying out of drama, calming ourselves down as rapidly as we possibly can. And then by seeing life differently. So we can stop unnecessarily stressing ourselves by either accepting, responding and fixing, or moving away from life's challenges as they present. And in this video, we're going to explore triggers, things that push our buttons or set us off into panic, fear, anger. And these things happen almost instantly and seemingly just happen to us outside of our conscious control. By now, you should be well into the exposure therapy we outlined in video 8, reprogramming your old anxiety triggers out from the amygdala's unsafe database into the safe database through repetition, calming a dialogue, a sagged body, and by continually ensuring our parasympathetic nervous system is on, keeping us in rest, repair, and digest mode, where our immune system is most effective and where we are recharging our emotional battery, like we discussed in video 4, which you might want to watch again now you're further down the process. Now, many of you have contacted me to tell me how shocked you were at how effective the exposure therapy process has been and what remarkable changes you've experienced as you've exposed yourself and calmed yourself down with the tapping. And others have said to me things like, well, I feel silly doing that. Or my fear is too overwhelming to expose myself to it. Or I can't touch my body due to contamination. And so they haven't done it. Or they've said, I'll do it later. If this is you, don't beat yourself up, but do be aware that in those moments, the OCD has won. The sabotage won the day. And these are the patterns that we're really, really looking to break. Know this, exposure therapy is your primary pathway to freedom from anxiety, and I would suggest that you spend a lot of time with video 8 and the many upcoming meditations and routines that I'll be producing for you. So you may have made really good progress with your anxiety, but things might still be triggering you, and perhaps that doesn't make sense. So let me give you an example. What if your partner said to you, "Why didn't you empty the dishwasher?" And rather than calmly saying, "Oh, I forgot," you fly off the handle with a out of proportion triggered response. "Well, I've been too busy and you never do it anyway." And then when your partner says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, why'd you get all angry like that?" You don't know why. You know it's silly, but you just can't stop it. Why? Because it just happens to you. So these are what I mean by triggers or hot buttons. And I'd like to explore where they might come from and how you might dampen their intensity or perhaps even rid yourself of them completely. Common examples of this might be someone criticizing you, a situation causing you embarrassment, being the center of attention, a person doubting or questioning you, a person sort of rolling their eyes at you, a room being untidy, a person shouting at you or refusing to help you, someone not listening to you, perhaps you feeling guilty even though you haven't done anything wrong. And these are triggers we often have in addition to our common anxiety or OCD triggers. In likelihood, these triggers have probably been with you for years, and often the people closest to you are more aware of them than you are. I heard a woman say to her husband, "I know this is a sensible subject because you get really upset if you feel I'm criticizing you, but I just wanted to say," and poof, he just flew off the handle, justifying to her how he was okay with criticism. You could say he was triggered, yet still defended the thought that he was okay with receiving criticism when he clearly wasn't. It's more common for us to see this in others than within ourselves, because we tend to hide these unconscious triggers behind stories of self-justification. Like saying, "I'm okay with criticism, it's just that you keep bringing up that one thing over and over again." Or, "I'm open to receiving feedback, but in this situation, I know more about X, Y, Z than you do." Either way, it would be nice if we could remove this unconscious outburst. Firstly, so others don't have to walk on eggshells around us. Secondly, so that we may remain open-minded, so we can grow. And thirdly, so we can remain calm to keep our emotional battery nicely charged, no matter what anybody says or does to us. To understand how this works, we must return to biology and psychology and break it down a bit further. As ever, these are metaphors. Because I'm showing you so many different ways to change yourself, some of my techniques may contradict others. That's okay. As I keep saying, life is contradictory. Just accept it. I hope too that you're getting glimpses of the fact that our horse doesn't need you, the rider. Plus the horse is very, very programmed. So much more than you might imagine. If you were in my office now and we were doing some work, I would ask you to sit still, to trust me, and to not move. And then I'd walk towards you, and I'd put out my hand as if to shake yours, and I'd say, "Oh, pleased to meet you." Okay? And it's really hard for the other person to not respond. Consciously, you think, "I'm not going to put my hand out." Yet unconsciously, your hand just arises because that's what it was programmed to do. If you go up to anybody at a bus stop, okay, say hi, smile, hold out your hand, and they'll either shake it, or as they unconsciously raise their hand, they'll consciously pull it back again when they realize they don't know who you are. There's a very fine line between what is automatic within us and what we think we can consciously control. These responses, they need to be unconscious and they need to be automatic, because we can't spend all day consciously thinking about everything our body should or shouldn't do. And like I said before, although the unconscious mind is 1,000,000 times faster and 1,000,000 times more powerful than the conscious mind, it still has lots of things to do each moment of every day. Cell reproduction, food digestion, balance, blinking, growing, breathing, running our immune system. It's very busy. And because the unconscious is so busy, it saves time by automating every action that it possibly can automate. The handshake is learned, and then repetition, gets automated. I remember joining the Scouts when I was 11, and they shook hands with the left hand for some reason. And it took ages to master using the left hand, because although consciously I knew what I wanted to do, the right hand would just came up. Okay, it just popped up. I couldn't control it. But then the repetition just stayed in place. And when I was 16 and I left, I had to reprogram my unconscious back into the appropriate right hand response. How did I do that? Repetition, 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 until unconsciously the mind just accepted that and automated back to that response. It's like driving a foreign car. You jump into the driver's seat, ready to go, and you realise there's no steering wheel because you're in the passenger seat. So these are the programs that I've been reminding you of again and again. They were trained to become your unconscious responses. And once you can see them, with repetition, you can reprogram them. Although sometimes you may need to change a belief system at the same time. Let me give you an example. You might want to put yourself first rather than always helping other people. But to do that, you may need to change an old belief system. Perhaps changing one that says putting yourself first is selfish, and that selfish is bad. Being selfish isn't bad. Putting yourself first is not bad. These are just patterns that you learned and then unconsciously automated. My own way of handling that old conundrum was to change my beliefs. I now see myself as selflessly selfish. I'll do anything for anybody if I want, and if I don't want, then I won't. And each day may be different depending on how I feel each day. And we're going to be doing a lot of work around beliefs and values in later videos. Let me give you a few extreme ones for you to ponder, so that you can watch what stories arise from your own programming when I say these things to you. If I was to say, it's okay to say no to people. It's okay to put yourself first. It's okay to not follow rules. It's okay to not have an opinion. It's okay to not have to go to work. It's okay to just have fun and play. It's okay to not be serious. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to not care. It's okay for you to do whatever you want to do. It's okay to be messy and untidy. It's okay for you to turn up late. You see, generally, people who have those types of beliefs tend to be very happy and hardly anxious at all. And I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, just what beliefs might you be clinging on to that may not be serving you well? All beliefs are learned or conditioned into you. Rarely are they our conscious choice, when indeed I think that they could be. Anyway, let's delve a little deeper into how our unconscious works, how it gets programmed, and how we can recognize what we need to do to get it to operate in a way that's more favorable for our own emotional happiness. So here's what happens. Imagine you're 3 years old and you're playing in the park with your parents, and a big Doberman dog comes running towards you. You weigh 40 pounds, the dog weighs 140 pounds, and it leaps up, pushes you to the floor, and it begins to lick your face. Your mother can only see from behind what's happening, and she thinks that your face is being bitten off. So she is screaming and panicking. Plus, of course, your own instinctual DNA, which has been programmed into you for millennia, is telling you to stay away from animals with big teeth. But the dog is just licking your face. Why should this be a problem? Well, because your brain sits in darkness, pulling information from all your senses and pulling information from the environment around you. It's being bombarded in that moment with intense fear signals, which classifies the dog as dangerous and places an alarms program in your amygdala's unsafe database, even though nothing bad actually happened. Although, of course, at the same time, something bad could have happened. It was the perception of the moment, the screaming of the parent, you being pushed over, and the reinforcement by the subsequent, are you okay? Come away from that dog. And maybe even the retelling of that story. Oh, we were so lucky. We heard about a young child who was mauled by a wolf. It could have been so much worse. Can you see how in that moment the amygdala would have just had a program installed into the unsafe database as a template for what to avoid in the future? And this is just how we mammals learn, it's how we get programmed. Perhaps we might liken that program to a landmine, a bomb, that'll just fire off if triggered. But it doesn't matter how it gets triggered, or if what triggered it was truly dangerous or not, or just in the same pattern matching class, i.e. a dog, where all dogs are unconsciously grouped together regardless of their potential danger, whether it's a Doberman, a wolf, or a Chihuahua. The child was safe, nothing bad happened, yet the amygdala became programmed. Perhaps the following day, the child's in the park again and feels a little uncomfortable because there may be dogs in the park. And the mind is running stories about dogs that keep nearly triggering the bomb in the amygdala. Okay? So it's a little bit stressful. It's a little bit worrying. And the little Chihuahua runs past, and to the amygdala, it's pattern matched as a dog, and it just fires off and floods you with all the fear, stress chemicals that we've been talking about in all the last videos. You freak out with the fight or flight response, the stress chemicals run through your body, your conscious thinking mind gets turned off, and there you are, out of control, in the middle of a panic attack, within seconds. What does mum do? She picks you up and she soothes you. She holds you softly, talks to you in a soft and slow tonality. It's okay. Don't you worry. I'm here now. It was just a little doggy. It's all right. Everything's fine. Sound familiar? And her behavior tricks your brain down into calmness, where eventually your triggered sympathetic nervous system turns off and your calmer sympathetic nervous system comes back online. She puts you back down, and then you just stand there, okay, bemused. With your conscious mind thinking, what's wrong with me? Nobody else is scared of dogs, okay? Whilst your unconscious mind is metaphorically thinking, excellent, that'll keep him safe. And here's the big problem. Once these programs, these landmines, are installed into the unsafe database of the amygdala, no part of your conscious or your unconscious ever goes back to check to see if they're still true. Plus, the installed program, the landmine in the amygdala, doesn't understand language. It resides in an old part of the mind, of the brain that was around before language even was. So a trigger, a landmine, a program, a belief, whatever we call it, installed in the unsafe database of your amygdala when you were 3, will still fire off when you're 13, 23, or 33, regardless of all the times you consciously tell yourself, I know it's only a little Chihuahua, I know it can't help me, because your amygdala is not listening. And it's only through exposure therapy, experiencing that which triggers you, then calming yourself down quickly, and then repeating, that we can diffuse that landmine, reprogram that trigger, and subsequently change your beliefs. We'll come back to that little dog story in a moment. Let's explore another more subtle childhood landmine or trigger or conditioning experience. What if you were 6 years old, having supper with your mother, and she said, oh, Dad's been at the football game all afternoon, and you know he drinks a little too much and he gets a bit angry when he's had a beer. So before he comes home, let's tidy up all your toys, let's get everything nice, let's get you into bed so that we don't upset him when he comes in. And she might go on to add, if you hear any shouting or crashing downstairs, don't worry, I promise you I'll be all right, but you must stay in bed and you must be very, very quiet. And if Dad comes into the room, pretend you're asleep and don't say anything, and just stay really, really still and very, very quiet. Now you might argue that that was a good strategy for the mother to use for the child's safety, although another strategy might have been to leave him. However, the past is gone and we have to work with what did happen, whether we like it or not. So a landmine program was installed into the child's amygdala's unsafe database that conditioned the reaction in times of danger, be quiet, don't speak up. And if that was installed when you were 6, it'll still be running when you're 26 or 36, unconsciously as a trigger, even if you consciously don't want it. So as an adult, you may be at work and you need to leave early that day. So you go into your boss's office to ask for permission to leave, and he's on the phone shouting at someone. And the shouting through pattern matching triggers your landmine. You get all anxious and scared, overwhelmed. And when your boss says, yeah, how can I help you? You just mutter nothing, 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 and you move back to your desk. Where consciously you think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stand up for myself? And unconsciously, outside of your conscious awareness, you think, excellent, that kept him safe, that kept her safe. Are you beginning to see how this works? And if your boss has a moustache, and so did your father, there lies another level of unconscious pattern matching. I think at some level we all know this to be true, but I don't think we are aware of how deeply programmed we all are. And it gets worse. Let's return to our dog story, our dog trigger, our dog landmine, whatever terminology you feel okay with. That incident may have happened when the child was 3, 4, or 5, it doesn't matter, okay? However, as they grow up, they may even consciously forget about that original dog experience, which makes their fears even more sort of intangible. Can't really understand, why do I feel this way? Nothing bad happened to me with a dog. However, it seems that the unconscious never forgets, although what it remembers can be changed or even rewritten, which of course is what we're going to be doing as we move through the course. So in my story, a young child has a Doberman experience. The unconscious amygdala gets programmed with a landmine placed in the unsafe database, pattern matched to dogs, and maybe things that are similar to dogs, like wolves or coyotes or whatever. And each time a dog comes into the vicinity of the child, or to a lesser degree, the thoughts of the child, the landmine fires off, flooding him or her with anxiety to try and keep the child safe and away from those perceived dangers. Over time, the child learns where the boundaries of this landmine are. If the dog is big and on a leash, it can come perhaps within 20 feet before the landmine's triggered, whereas a small dog on a leash can come perhaps within 5 feet before I get triggered. So the conscious mind, the protective personality, the ego, your little 8-year-old, whatever we choose to call it, becomes trained to become more alert to all the external things happening in any situation and starts to pre-worry as a form of what if safety. What if they bring their dog? What if a dog sneaks up from behind? So the little 8-year-old becomes hyper-vigilant and continually scanning all of these what if scenarios to ensure that the boundary conditions are not breached. Initially because it's just scary, but as a child gets older, the anxiety episodes may cause them embarrassment in front of friends or their family. So, for example, some friends knock at the door and say, hey, we're off to the park to play football. Would you like to come along? And of course you do, but you're also afraid that if a dog were to catch you unawares, okay, you might freak out, you'd lose control, perhaps even cry, and then they would all laugh and make fun of you. So you say, oh, I can't come out today because I'm helping my dad. Maybe tomorrow. And they knock the next day, but you're still nervous. And you say, oh, no, I'm sorry, I have to finish my homework, maybe the next day. And then the third day, the fourth day, they don't knock for you anymore. And you may think, why don't they knock for me anymore? What's wrong with me? Not realizing that it was your behavior, your responses that trained them to behave in the way that they're treating you. And I think one of the most sad things about anxiety is that you're missing out on having fun in the now because of a virtual reality story about the future, which as we've seen, never really comes because it can only ever be now, and it always is now. And bear with me here, because this is really important. Gradually, the child may forget about that dog incident, when he was 3, and the ego or the protective personality might start to feel silly that you're scared about dogs. So it sneakily changes tactics and adopts a less embarrassing cover story, one that's more palatable. Perhaps that you are allergic to dogs. So a friend says, hey, fancy coming over for a sleepover? And you'd say, oh, I'd love to, but if you've got a dog, I can't because I'm allergic to dogs. Can you see how that story is a little less silly? Kind of makes you feel a little less out of control. And if you're not careful, you may actually become psychosomatically allergic, where an unconscious uncomfortable, unconscious condition may be helping you, although it's not the good kind of help. And we talked a lot about that in video 6, about all the ways that OCD and anxiety can sabotage you to keep you at home. By now you've forgotten about the incident. You don't have to worry about going near dogs. And if you do flip out, you've got a cover story that saves you from looking silly. Then as you get older, from the allergy story, the ego might morph it into something like, I don't like dogs because they're smelly and dirty, and I might catch something from them. And perhaps this becomes your new conscious story that you believe, that you tell yourself, yet the real program is a landmine programmed into your amygdala from all those years ago, pattern matched to dogs. Can you see how that one past event, where the Doberman didn't even hurt you, may become a whole different story that's woven into your own identity, woven into your belief system, and it feels so real, but it's only a story. So how can you retrain your amygdala when you think the problem is dogs are dirty, which you might not even see as a problem as long as you stay away from dogs? Can you see how nested and hidden and separated we may have become from our real triggers? So if you have any triggers or hot buttons, like not liking to be criticized or judged, feeling awkward, so that if feeling awkward if you are forced to make decisions, not wanting to let go or embarrass yourself, not wanting to get angry, not wanting to let people down, not wanting to get muddy, not wanting conflict, not wanting to ask for help, the need to be perfect, needing to win, needing to be tidy, needing to be right, needing to be quiet. Whatever your trigger, whatever your hot button is, okay, know this. You need to start exploring deeper down under the cover story that your ego has given you about these situations. And then perhaps you may begin to glimpse the truth. Oh yeah, my father used to criticize me. My mother used to embarrass me. Oh, my grandfather shouted at me. Oh, that teacher bullied me. Oh, that traumatic event conditioned me. And here's the message that I need you to grasp. We are starting to separate the story from the trigger. Your partner says, did you empty the dishwasher? Which is not a criticism, it's just a question. Or what did you do that for? Which for the most part is just a question, it's an inquiry. And you notice your landmine has been metaphorically stepped on, up rushes all the fear, okay? And you do your best to separate the story from the triggered reaction. Instead of just flying into an unconscious, well, I emptied it last time, you say, oh, give me a second, I think I've been triggered. And you close your eyes and you sag your body, yeah? And you stay out of the mind stories if you can. You keep your attention on this potential energy, okay? This trauma being released as kinetic energy through the agitation of your body, which is a wonderful thing because it's discharging your atomic battery. And you just accept. And you just keep your attention on the feeling, not the story. Okay? If you like, you step into the breathing exercise like I taught you in video 11. Just deep breath in, you hold it for 3-4 seconds and you breathe it out. Bit of resistance with your lips until your lungs are empty, and then just let your diaphragm pour the next part of the oxygen back into your body. Okay? You are just being with the energy, the fear, the emotion until it passes through you. And then you return to your partner and you say, thanks for waiting. What were you talking about? Oh yeah, you're right, I didn't empty the dishwasher. Sorry, it didn't even enter my head. So this is the next big step of your recovery, to separate the stories from the emotional reactions. These triggers that set off our landmines in the amygdala, they can come from almost anywhere, okay? A TV commercial, a co-worker, a government policy, a neighbor, a parent, a friend, a dog. Even your own unconscious mind in the form of OCD using your own landmines against you in the form of sabotage, which is why we spent so much time exploring this exposure therapy. The next video, video 15, is a big one. where I'm going to be teaching you a deep meditation that you can use so we can go hunting for these landmines, okay? And then when we find them, safely detonate them, and finally vent out all that stuck atomic energy that you've been dragging around with you for years, causing heaviness, lethargy, fear, anxiety, and depression. I'll also be teaching you ways to find landmines that you might not even know you have. And this is especially important for people who have a lingering depression that just won't shift, or have serious past trauma that you may or may not remember in its true entirety. You're probably becoming more aware now that I'm guiding you through a process that has a lot of structure and it's ordered in a certain way. If you're watching the videos, if you're doing the homework, repeating, this is what's probably starting to happen to you, or will start to happen to you in the next month or two, if it hasn't already. You are going to start to get a little more angry than usual, perhaps shouting a bit more than usual, perhaps flipping out through frustration rather than fear more than usual, standing up for yourself more than usual. And this is a really, really good thing. It might feel bad, but it's really, really positive. And I really want you to embrace it. Recovery seems to follow these steps. As you rise out of depression, you seem to move into anxiety, which, although it feels bad, you have more energy available to you to go and do things. And then as you rise out of anxiety, you seem to step into anger, which, though still a relatively negative energy, it has more power than anxiety. So you start saying no to people or making changes in your life, and you start doing things. And then from the changes that you make due to your anger, you feel pride in what you've achieved, which moves you up to the next energy level, which we might call courage, which is simply the ability to be vulnerable, yet get on with doing whatever needs doing for your own well-being in any moment. And as I said before, if we exclude unhealthy thoughts, unhealthy behavior patterns, and if we exclude the things we're not fixing in our life, depression really is the result of stuck energy in our atomic energy battery, which we need to find and release. Anxiety is the result of too many landmines in the amygdala's unsafe database. And OCD is the focus on thoughts and physical compulsions that distract us from the too many landmines in the amygdala's unsafe database. I hope that makes sense. So in summary, I'd like you to begin to separate your stories from your emotions. I'd like you to explore what cover stories might you have unconsciously developed to stop you feeling bad about your anxiety. And I would like you to honestly ask yourself, what and who pushes my buttons? What and who triggers me? And then how can I use these triggers wisely? How can I move towards them rather than avoid them, so that we can vent stuck energy from our atomic battery? So your homework. I'd like you to watch this video a few times, then perhaps revisit video 8 where we discuss the amygdala, the unsafe database, just to remind yourself of its absolute importance in your recovery via exposure therapy. And for those of you with OCD, you should be doing the video 8 tapping process on all of your compulsions and all of your intrusive thoughts, okay? If you're not, this is OCD sabotage in action. Smile, yeah, you got me, and then go back and step back in to your exposure therapy. I also said in video 8 that I would be teaching you a tapping routine to use each morning and another one to use each evening. Well, I haven't forgotten, and here it is. And I would urge you to see these two routines perhaps as a meditation and something you can incorporate into your daily regime. Time for yourself to work on and with yourself. It might mean that you need to get up 15 minutes earlier. Okay, make the time. It's a good thing. So the first meditation is as you go to bed each night, and I call it decompressing the day. You sit for a moment and you consider anything that happened that day that you didn't like, that angered you, frustrated you. something you did, something they did, something they didn't do. They accused you of not emptying the dishwasher. The kids annoyed you. The weather frustrated you. Spending money on that new tyre that you'd earmarked for a meal out. You get the picture. Anything that gave you an emotion that you didn't want, or a thought pattern that didn't serve you well. We want to make sure that before we sleep, we dissipate those energies and we let go of those stories. And as we do this meditation, we're not looking for answers or asking why anything happened. We're just decompressing our day. We're just letting our stuff go. We're just surrendering to what did happen and staying out of the stories. To remind you of the tapping process, I'll start with the whole routine. And of course, find your own way to do this. So I'll start with the whole routine and then I'll just bring it down into an abbreviated version. So you start with tapping on your hand. Even though Fred was angry that I didn't empty the dishwasher, I love and respect myself. We do this 4 times, just like before. And in your mind, you're picturing the event that you had. But don't get caught up in the story. We're separating the story from the energy. So even though Fred was angry that I didn't empty the dishwasher, I love and respect myself. Even though Fred was angry that I didn't empty the dishwasher, love and respect myself. Even though Fred was angry that I didn't empty the dishwasher, love and respect myself. We move to the hollow under your cheekbones up here, and just very, very simply, dishwasher, dishwasher, dishwasher. Keep picturing the event, but don't run a story. Okay? We come down here to the crease of your chin, and now we can change the story a little bit. I can let that go now. It's only my problem if I make it my problem. I just got triggered and everything's fine. Yeah? Maybe Fred got triggered and everything's fine. See what I'm doing? We're just changing the story onto your chest. Okay, tap in here. I can let that go now. It's just a dishwasher. I'm glad it got emptied. How lucky are we that we have a dishwasher? How lucky am I that I have Fred? How lucky is Fred to have me? Yeah. And if any emotions come up, let them come up. Let them move through you. Don't add a story. Of course, sometimes your unconscious will add a story. Yes, what it does. Yes, but Fred should have known better. But what we're doing is we're learning to see that and to detach from it, to step back from it and just be with them. Be with these emotions, accept them, surrender to them. Onto your wrist. The rider can be calm even if the horse isn't. I'm the rider. The rider is calm. It's not the rider's problem. I can let that go. And then a deep breath in. Hold it for 3-4 seconds and slowly let it out with some resistance from your lips. Sagging down till it's all out, and then just let your diaphragm pull the next breath in. And then you may need to go around again if there's a secondary story or some fear comes up. So off you go again. Even though I've not trained Fred, even though I've trained Fred to shout at me because I never stand up for myself, I love and respect myself. Or you jump to the next one. Even though I took my anger out on my poor dog, I love and respect myself. And just process that energy, just go around, but stay out of the stories. It was just what happened. You can't go back, but you can discharge any guilt, fear, blame, whatever. And you can let the emotions go. And then you go around again. Even though the government is making me X, Y, Z, I love and respect myself. Even though I didn't phone my mum, I love and respect myself. Even though I maxed out my credit card, I love and respect myself. And you just keep going round until you've decompressed the energy of your day, but stay out of the stories. It'll take a while. It'll take a few evenings until you find a way that suits you. I think tapping is best, but equally, you can lay on your bed and just do it in your mind. Either way, make sure at the end you do the big breath in and the big breath out, okay? Let the emotions move through you, stay out of the stories. If you need other sort of words to use, if your emotions are getting a bit much, you can just say, I surrender to these emotions as they move through me. It's very, very powerful. If you're feeling good, you might finish with a few rounds of gratitude, which is a whole other video that I'm going to be making. I'm thankful for how well I'm proceeding through this course. Thankful, thankful, thankful. Yeah. So happy to change. Just trust in my body. Happy, happy, happy. See how it works? So happy I have a house. So happy for my health. Yeah. So we're so lucky to have X, Y, Z. And even if you don't believe the positive stories yet, it's still a good thing to do because we're rewiring our attitudes. The second meditation is for the mornings as you awaken. And here we're going to pre-worry and pre-decompress for the upcoming day. Same process as the evening one. Even though I'm nervous about that presentation, I love and respect myself. We do this 4 times. You know? Picture yourself doing the presentation, stay out of the stories, let the emotions come up, just be with them. Even though I'm nervous about the presentation, I love and respect myself. Even though I'm nervous about the presentation, I love and respect myself. And you can change the words. Even though I messed up the last presentation, I love and respect myself. Yeah? And then you just move on. Presentation, presentation, presentation. I can let that go now. I can let it go. I can just do my best. Nobody likes presenting. It'll be over before I know it. It's not personal. You know? It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. I'll just do my best. I won't beat myself up. It's just a job. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And then a deep breath. Sag your body and just... And then you move on to the next one. Pick the next thing. Or even though it's terrible traffic on my drive to work, even though there's a parents meeting at the school, even though I've got to go to the dentist, even though I need to get that report finished. You get the picture? Stay out of the stories about what may happen. Just process the emotion behind what you think is going to happen. Now this process obviously doesn't mean you won't have to go and do your thing, but you might be surprised how you react. Because in a way, what you've done is some pre-exposure therapy from the safety of your bed. You know, our horsey is so trickable, so placeboable, and so programmable that silly us if we don't take advantage of this. Once again, as you get good at it, you might want to finish the meditation with a visualization of how well it could go. You know, how good you felt when they all clapped at the end of the presentation, how handsome or pretty the dentist was, or how you used the traffic jam to sing your favorite song, or do some of these meditations. Whatever makes you feel good. A virtual good story will make you feel better than the same old virtual bad story that's been running for years and years and years in your mind. There's no way to do these meditations wrong except to not do them. Play around with them. Find out what works for you. Then finally, as these meditations become more natural, start to observe your landmines and the roles that they may play in those stories. See if you can find your cover stories, your excuses and your avoidance strategies. Observe too all of these landmines and cover stories in all the people around you. Okay? It will expand your compassion for them as well as for yourself. And of course, if you really love a person, why would you push their button? You could rephrase your words so as to not trigger them out of love for them. You say, hey, you look like you've had a busy day. Let me empty the dishwasher for you. And you might be very surprised how differently they respond back to you. And remember too, you might be working on letting go of your triggers, but they may not even know they have one. So I think that with this knowledge comes a little responsibility. And we might call that responsibility accepting people the way they are, rather than how the story in our mind would like them to be. It's a gentle, calm, and a very loving form of acceptance. The next video is a big one. I will include another meditation. Thank you all for your continued support and your positive feedback. Until then, let's find and discharge the stuck energy in those landmines. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.